Going on, guys? Sensible Prepper Live. We're going to go prepper school, and we are going to talk about the top 10. I say top 10. These are just 10 items that a lot of times we overlook. Now, some of you guys have this checked off, but maybe there's something here that you haven't thought about. Or if you're new to prepping, it's a big, huge world. And so hopefully this will give you some ideas and things to think about. And I'll kind of go through some ideas about why I do and what these items are for specifically. There's nothing on this list that's frivolous. It's really needed. But sometimes, especially financial, or you're working on your food, you're working on certain things, you just haven't gotten there yet. And so these are items that you want to bring in later. I mean, first off, initially, you got to take care of your food, your water, your medical, those kind of things. And sometimes medical, which I didn't put on here, can be on that list because sometimes people just kind of overlook it. So we're going to look, though, again. And so one thing I do want to mention first off, and this is something you can't do without, is fire. You need to have a fire kit. You need to have a way to be able to start fires. Man has had fire from the beginning. It boils your water, cooks your food, gives you light, gives you heat, and can keep predators at bay. It builds morale. Having a fire kit's essential. And I love Exotac. Been using Exotac for a long time, and they give a 20% discount using Suits20 with the link down below. But even before they started sponsoring us, this is my fire choice, and there's a lot of great options. So build your fire kit, not just a big lighter. Have some other tools, especially for survival. Or if you want to be the hero at a barbecue, get your fire kit out. Okay, there's a couple of things, excuse me, that we're going to address. And we're going to start out because I just have the items laid out. So I'm going to kind of bring them up, the ones I can. The ones I can. We have a couple of firearm things that we're going to look at, but we're not going to pick those up because on live you can't. First thing that I like are comms. And, a lot of times we have our phones and they're so convenient. We use them for so many things. But phones, there's a lot of reasons. Number one, cell service could be out. So the first off with comms, and there's two different subsections here. First thing you need is just a good emergency radio. You can get weather reports. You can listen to what's going on around. If for some reason your local news is out, and we have shortwave, so you can actually listen around the world. This is just a Midland. It's a great little radio. In fact, it has solar, battery crank, has rechargeable batteries. It's got a lot of options, has a light on it. I mean, it's full on, a great little option. And you can also get the weather. So whether you are in a survival situation or not, you can have this tuned to weather when you have inclement weather. So that's just an option. But one thing that is really, to me, very important is that we have two-way communication. Now, there's ham radios out there, and that's going to be more of your longer range. There's a lot that goes to it. You have to have a license. They can be very complicated. I highly recommend getting your ham license because they've been used in emergency situations all over the world for a long time. But having some regular two-way radios are going to be vital. And one of the reasons is just for security. Having security around, trying to use your phone in a security situation can be dangerous, and you may not be able to see the alerts. You may not be able to. With a radio, you can turn this on. You can get earbuds. There are little earbuds, and there's a lot of different options to make these very useful. But to me, one of the biggest options is for security. We can take this, get on a certain channel. There are some encrypted radios. You can do a lot of different things with radios, but at least have some kind of two-way radio that you can tap into someone if you're in a security situation, especially if you have a place and there's some people messing around and you want to check that out. You want to be able to communicate. Communications is vital. One of the things, and I'll tell you a little side story, during World War II, the French had the best tanks at the time. At the beginning of World War II, they had the largest army. When Germany invaded France, they had radios in each of their tanks. The French only had a radio in the command tank. Even though the French had actually better tactics, better tanks, the Germans were able to defeat the French on the battlefield because of communication. Communication is vital, not only in a war situation, but just in a family or a survival situation. So make sure that you secure some sort of comms. One thing that we've gone with is Starlink, and we can bypass, the internet service. We can go to satellite, and that's another way to be able to utilize your comms. Now, before I go to the next point, I do want to mention Sarah Max over there. We appreciate her setting things up. She will be giving me questions that you have. So go ahead at any time, ask questions. Doesn't have to be specifically pertaining to this. And then we'll take a break and she can give me those questions and we'll try our best to answer them. So comms, big time. And make sure that you have comms, though, that are suitable for your situation, but also suitable when the power's down, the grid's down. And having rechargeable comms is important as well. These are rechargeable, has a little base with them. And these are Midland as well. Midland's been around for a long time. I really like Midland, but there are some other options out there. Okay, another thing, and this is kind of simple. I mean, it's a simple thing that a lot of times people just don't think about, and that is a spork. And I'm going to tell you guys, you find a can of beans or something, and you don't have utensils to be able to get that out. It is really difficult. Plus, it makes a big mess. But it was funny. I had a friend of mine had takeout the other night, and they called me and said, "Man, I just got takeout," and they were at a hotel room, and they had nothing to eat with. They had to go downstairs and get their utensil. And that was a very simple situation. But in a survival situation, having a spork, yes, you can dig it out with your hands pretty much. But having some kind of fork or some kind of way to be able to eat, it's just one of those things that just happens. I got to move my phone because somebody is buzzing me like crazy. But having having some kind of utensils, and two, a lot of times like this set, it's a 3-piece set. It's a U.S. military set, and you have a fork, a spoon, and you have a knife. So this, in fact, there's a bottle opener on this one. So it gives you a number of options, and it allows you to be able to eat. And eating is important. There's nothing worse than having a really nice mountain house meal and you've cooked it out, even when you're camping and you're setting up or you're on a little picnic and you don't have a spork or some kind of way to eat. It just sucks. So you want to make sure that you're able to eat. And two, it helps you to be a little more sanitary. You could have whatever on your hands. You have a spoon, you can go ahead and eat. So having some kind of utensils to be able to eat. Very simple, but definitely one thing that's important. Okay, we're going to get into a little more detailed stuff here. Now, this one is one that may surprise you, but for ladies, it probably doesn't. This is, your feminine hygiene products. There are multiple uses, but one thing that happens a lot of times is you don't even think about this. This is something that you need to stock up on, and these have a really long shelf life. You can have it, but these are also great for wound care. And if you are injured. Now, is it the best? No, but this is really great to have. You're going to have them anyway. You should have them stocked up. Ladies, you should have these, an abundance of them. And then there are other uses. It's one of the things that I love, and I really gravitate toward things that have multiple uses. So if I need to, obviously for the use intended, but then again, for medical, if you just want to clean up a mess, if you have food on your face because you didn't bring a spork, be interesting to watch, but you have something here that you can use. And again, it just has multiple uses. And there you go. Okay. Another thing, and this kind of goes with kind of what we were laughing about, but having a mirror. Now, mirrors are great, especially if you have an injury where you can't see it or you have an injury on your face. And this allows you to see, maybe, you could have a tick on your face. You wouldn't even know it. You can look at the mirror. You're able to, see what's going on. Plus, when you clean your face, all the different things. But having a mirror that actually is a survival mirror where we have a hole in the center. And so we can use that for signaling. So if we're lost, take it and we can aim it toward rescuers or to other people, and they can spot that mirror, that reflection. And in fact, you can see it here with the lighting. I mean, it's definitely something, but this has multiple uses as well. And so again, we can take it and we can check out things. Okay. Had a dream one night. It was in the middle of the night, I had been thinking about something in particular that I needed to add to my preps. And so in this dream, I woke up in the dream and I went out to my big window. We have a big window in our living room. And I was looking out. It was pitch black dark. There were no lights anywhere, but I could see forms moving out in the yard. I could see them kind of creeping up to the house. And the first thing I thought was night vision. Why do I not have night vision? I had been looking at PVS 14s for a while. They are very expensive. $3,500 for a good pair. And then when you get into other things like this helmet, it gets out of hand. Now, that's a lot of money to put towards something, but there are a lot of different options out there with night vision. There are some more inexpensive Gen 2, Gen 3 that you can use that have older technology, but they still work. And really, night vision is a superpower. We went to a TNVC Night Fighter 101 class. It was extremely enlightening. Number one, you're able to identify. You're able to see. If you know someone, you're able to see that. You may not be able to even identify someone. Having night vision, again, it gives you the ability to see, to identify, to know what's going on. Plus, it's a force multiplier. It gives you advantage over others. The reason why military and law enforcement use night vision is because it gives them the advantage. One of the things that happened, especially like in Iraq or in Afghanistan, was the U.S. forces had night vision. They could operate at night, while the other forces did not, or if they did, it was very limited. And so it really gave U.S. forces a huge advantage. There is huge advantages on the civilian side. Now, night vision, whether you get a monocular, you get binoculars, there's a ton of different options out there. And while they're a little expensive in your prepping other items, they're definitely worth it. It's something that you really should have. And also thermals. Now, one thing that I have that's the little thermal, and it's the Scout, and it's and now I can't even think of the name of it, but I'll think of it in a second. But it is thermal. Now, one of the things about thermal, it picks up heat signatures. It's not always the best at identifying. Your night vision is going to be better for identifying things. With thermals, you're going to have to be able to, you see the heat signature. It's a little bit blobby. They're making better and better. I reviewed the Yoder, the Super Yoder, and man, that thing even picked up great detail, but it was extremely expensive. And so thermal has come down over the past few years, and it's become where you can afford it. So having something though that, one thing, and I really like this, is the Aurora, which is it's not really thermal or night vision, but it works digitally for that, and it picks up light really well. So that's another thing. But finding something, and Optics Planet's a great source. They have a lot of different options there, and I just recommend you going. In fact, you can use, I believe it's Suits 10, and you get a 10% discount. But that is, and we don't get any kickback from that. We just offer that to help people. But again, the PVS 14, again, $3,500. That's a lot of money. A lot of your thermal scopes are very expensive, but there are other options out there. And so finding something, the FLIR, that was what I was thinking about. The FLIR Scout. It's a little handheld monocular. It even has a camera on it. You could even record things for security reasons. It gives a really decent picture. But here's the thing. You can hide from night vision, just like you can hide from regular sight. With thermal, it's difficult to hide because it picks up heat signatures. So if you walk up on a brush line or a forest, and you can even see other animals, you can see deer. And that's another thing. You can use it for hog hunting. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why thermal has become very popular. But it is a superpower. While it's expensive, even the lower end stuff, which you can pick up a good thermal monocular for $200-300, something like that. And then the more you pay, the better quality you get. But at least start out with something. Have something that's fairly inexpensive. One thing I will say about whatever you get is, if you're using alkaline batteries, keep the batteries out because from experience, I've had alkaline batteries to actually corrode in a night vision scope, and it ruined it. So you want to make sure you do that. But otherwise, having a good set of night vision is going to be extremely important, and it's going to be a force multiplier. And again, it's going to give you a superpower. Okay, let's go to one more, and then we're going to go to some questions, because you guys always have great questions. One thing too, and this goes along with the night vision, but this is during the day, and a good pair of binoculars. Now, there are some binoculars that work really well in low light. And so that is definitely one thing. In fact, even a standard pair of binoculars, when I take them hunting. Now you say, I've got a rifle scope so I can see things. You don't always want to be pointing a rifle or a firearm at someone to identify. Now, we have some pretty big areas on our property, and I can look across a couple of 100 yards. I might be able to see somebody, but number one, I can't identify them necessarily, or I can't really see what they're doing. Having a good pair of binoculars is going to allow you to see, it's going to allow you to observe at distances that are longer. So it gives you some security advantages, but it also keeps your mistakes down. You don't want to do something crazy. Now, when we're hunting, a lot of times I'm scanning with my binoculars, and a lot of times I'm looking out there with the naked eye. I may not be able to pick up what I'm seeing. With a pair of binoculars, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, there's something. Something's a little different. There's a white tail sticking up. So I know that, the white tail, the deer's out there, and I can monitor that. But if I'm using a rifle, typically you have a less field of view. It's more magnified a lot of times if you crank it down, and you're pointing a loaded rifle firearm at something, and you don't really know what it is. Going back to night vision, a few years ago, a friend of mine was hunting, and there was a couple there that was also hunting with thermals, and they were hunting wild boar. The girl went around and she looked over and she saw something in the bushes, hunched down, and thought it was a boar, and they shot it, and it was a man. And unfortunately, they were charged because it was manslaughter, but they were charged even though this guy was homeless. He was trespassing. He was on the wrong piece of property. So being able to identify with night vision would have been the way to go, because again, thermal sometimes makes it hard to see. But then again, when it comes to daylight, a good set of binoculars doesn't have to be a very expensive set. It can be a small little set where you can just look and give you better option, better vision, better detail. And so this is one thing, and it's funny because over the years, and I see these at different places, but this is something that's not brought out a lot. And to me, it's one of those vital parts of your survival security that you can really be able to identify and to see what's going on, and you can find threats. Okay, let's go to a few questions.
Nick Cower asked, howdy from Florida, is the Ruger Vaquero the best currently manufactured version of the Colt single action Army?
Well, those are great. Ruger makes incredible. I have a number of Ruger single actions. I love them. But there are some others. TaylorMade puts out a lot, and actually they import them from Italy. There's a lot of Italian single action revolvers that are really well made. But for the U.S., definitely the Ruger is going to be your best option, and it's going to probably be less expensive. So I love Ruger single actions. Again, I have a number of them, and all the way up from 44 Magnum and 357 and 45 Colt. I mean, I just love those. There's something about that click. But there are some options that are Italian made, and Taylor Firearms usually has a number of selections that are really close, and they're very well made, good quality. So, yeah, but a lot of times it's funny. I was talking to a buddy of mine that does cowboy action shooting, and he was talking about they're having another division where it's going strictly to Old West style. And a lot of the guys in the cowboy action use the Rugers. But it really has to be under specific specs. And he was talking about it, that a lot of the guys are going to have to get rid of their Rugers or their Black Hawks. But the Vaquero is definitely, I love the way it shoots, and it's a great choice.
Sis Clark asked, currently carrying the Bodyguard 2.0. What are a couple other holster brands you like?
That's my wife's concealed carry, is the Bodyguard. No, one of my concealed carries is the Bodyguard 2.0. The holster situation was a little difficult to find. I got a couple of holsters from Jackson Leatherwork does incredible craftsmanship, great holsters. And at one time, that was the only company that I knew made holsters. But that was right when they first came out. I'm sure there are other options right now. I like leather. That's just my deal. But there are definitely some good Kydex options if that's what you like. And I'm trying to think of something. Of course, one of my go-tos for Kydex, but I don't know that they make it for the Bodyguard, is G-Code. It's one of the most, to me, the precise holster manufacturers out there. It's got a lot of options. But C&G is also a good Kydex. It's a pretty good brand. I don't know. There's so many different holster companies, and right now I'm drawing a blank. But I'm not a big Kydex guy, except for more of a self-defense, like in a tactical situation. But for everyday carry, I carry the actually a Craft holster. I've got one on right now, and that is Craft Holsters makes really good quality holsters. If you want something really well done, is Mayhem Leather, but those can be expensive. But his work is the best I've ever seen anyone. But that goes back to leather. So Kydex, and I'm assuming Kydex. There's there's just a bunch, and I can't even think of the ones. But for me, I got Jackson Leatherwork. I got a really nice inside the waistband. It has a nice strong clip. It carries extremely well, and I love it.
Sam Dami asks, what plate carrier brands do you recommend?
Well, I'll tell you, we have one right here, and that's what we're gonna go into that in a minute. I'm a big fan of U.S. Grunt Gear. I really like his plate carrier systems. I like his work. He is number one, just an awesome guy. Former Marine. He does a lot of testing. He sends a lot of his equipment into the field for military units all over the world, and a master shooter. So his stuff is some of the best out there. But like this one, I believe this is HiCom Tactical. That's a great system. And there are a lot. In fact, I have a number of plate carriers. I have not had to get anything in a while. But there are some really good systems out there. But check out U.S. Grunt Gear. I love Robert over there. He is a former Marine. Again, Grandmaster shooter, championship shooter. He really knows what he's doing. He's a big support of law enforcement. He's down in Florida, and he does a great work. So that is definitely. But there are some really good systems out there, and what I like is now you can get the ceramic plates, which this has, or you can get the AR-500 plates for preppers, and as long as it has anti-spalling material, the AR-500 armor can take multiple. In fact, you can shoot the fire out of it, and it will continue to last. When you have ceramic and some of the new high-tech plates, once they've had a couple of rounds through them, you pretty much need to throw them out. So in a long-term survival situation, I like to have AR-500 armor type plates, but for no spalling and no danger, because one of the problems is with plates without the spalling, you can get shrapnel and fragments up into your jugular. I mean, it can take you out. And so you definitely want to make sure you have some kind of anti-spalling material. Let's go with one more, and we're going to hit the list again.
United States IRIE says, do any of you own a Calico M100 rimfire rifle? I was thinking about buying one.
No, I haven't even seen one of those in years. I believe that's the one with the cool drum magazine. I don't think they still make those. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but those are great little fun toys. But in 22, it gives you a lot of options in a survival situation, very high mag capacity. But if somebody in the comments wants to jump in on that one, that's a cool little firearm. Okay, let's go to our next on the list, and that would be a library. Now, we have our phones, we have Kindle, we have, audible books, and we can have all this information. You got online, all this information. But what happens when the grid goes down? What happens when the power's out? Having good books, good library of really high quality books. This is Mike Shelby. This is the the area intelligence. This is a phenomenal book. There's a ton. Going Home series, great books, a lot of info, and a great story. One of my favorite books, and I bring this up in every live, is the Modern Survival Manual for the Coming Economic Collapse, about actual events that happened in Argentina back in 2001. And guys, this is an eye opener for SHTF. And for Fowl, phenomenal guy that went through this. And he has a couple of other books that are great. And he does a podcast. We're actually getting ready to do something. We've been talking about having a podcast together and working on some stuff. But this is a great book. But there are so many different books. One thing, though, that I do is I look for books that have high ratings and that are typically recommended. So, and this one is the Professional Citizen Project. Great. And in fact, this is a new one that I have. I just have it set in this plastic. I hadn't even opened this one, but I already have the other. But I mean, there's prepper guides. There's all kind of stuff. But be careful. Look for ratings. Look for, your reviews and see. Again, I have a number of books that are more toward like Alas Babylon. It was written back in the 50s. It is a phenomenal book. One of my favorites. The book Atlas Shrugged, which is an economic collapse like no other. And just the whole story. It is one of the best books. That book, it took me a while to read it because it's really thick, but man, it never lets you down, and it gives you so much information. So having these books can be really vital if you have no grid. But really, honestly, I like to read, old-fashioned reading. There's something about reading all the time on electronic devices and the lighting that I just don't seem to concentrate quite as much as I do on a good, solid book. And so reading and having a library, and then you can pass these along to others, and you can get, you can really, especially in a group setting, if you have a group, you can have a small library. We do that with our prepper group, and we share books at times. We're very diligent about giving those books back because we know that some of these books are important. In fact, I even buy multiples. Well, like the Citizen Soldier Project, I buy multiples because I want to give them out sometimes. And I want to have as many people reading them in our group as possible. So the Going Home series, again, I mean, there's Lucifer's Hammer, where a meteor hits the earth and what happens in the survival situation. Another one is John Wesley Rawls and the Survivor series. Now, he did The Patriots, and that was really one of his first books and one of the first survival books I ever read. But John Wesley Rawls is a master, especially on the survival series. And those are just tremendous books. Gives you a lot of insight, things you would never think about. But then when you look at it, you go, wow, that really makes a lot of sense. So build yourself a good library. Oh, one thing I want to talk about is I do have my hat on, and we do have suit shirts. Check out suitsgear.com. We have a lot of swag, but we also do a lot of other things. We have a lot of my favorite gear, a lot of deals. We find deals that are just unbelievable. So go check it out. Also, a lot of our band videos are over there, and it's at suitsgear.com. Okay, books, library, vital. I've done some videos on my book library. I probably need to do an updated version of it because this is something that I really feel like is extremely important. Okay, we're going to go into something a little different now, and that is plate carriers. Now, why do you need a plate carrier? Well, really, first and foremost, is you need something to carry your magazines. So if you get one of the old Vietnam era load-bearing vests, and you can put your magazines in there, that's a good start, because you don't want magazines shoved in your pockets. You don't want, in your cargo pants, you got tons of magazines. Having a way and a system, whether it's a battle belt. That's another thing that US Grunt Gear does extremely well and really introduced me to battle belts. Battle belts where you have it just around your waist. You have your holster with your sidearm, but then you have places for extra magazines. Gives you hands-free. It allows you to do whatever you need to do, but you have all your ammunition right there where you need it, and it's orientated in the right position to be able to load and reload your firearm. If you want to step it up to a plate carrier, which I highly recommend, Having this gives you ballistic protection. And there's a lot of number of ways you can go that way. Just like we talked about with the question is you can get the ceramic plates. They have some really high-tech plates now that'll take multiple rounds. You can do the AR 500 armor, which will give you more long-lasting, long-term grid down survival. You can use them for years. I used to keep one in the door of my truck. So, and it will defeat 308, it'll defeat whatever. I mean, that's one thing about a lot of this body armor is that with these plates, they're heavy. But so is your standard ceramic plates. They can be very heavy. So, but that's just part of the cost. If you want to go with soft armor, which I do keep some soft armor in my bedroom, and if I ever had that bump in the night, it's really easy to slip that over. Now, that will only defeat handgun ammunition. But typically, if somebody's breaking into your house, they can have an AR-15. And if they do, that soft body armor is not going to help much. But it does give you some protection, at least from handguns. So having some kind of armor, I mean, guys, the Middle Ages was full of men fighting in armor, and we still fight in armor. And if you see your law enforcement, they're wearing some kind of ballistic protection. And as things were to happen, especially in a grid down situation, things will degrade and law enforcement will not be there necessarily. It's good to be able to protect yourself. I mean, guys, that's one of the things that's huge about my Suits channel, which is my gun channel, is that I want to encourage people to take self-defense as their responsibility. That is the most important thing. The police are not there all the time to save you. Honestly, we don't want police on every corner. We need to take responsibility for ourselves and for our family. And, carrying a firearm, I'm a concealed carry holder. I've been carrying firearms for years and years. I don't really go anywhere without them. But this gives it up a notch. And it gives you more protection. It allows you to be protected even from, where you can continue to protect your family. Because let's face it, if you get taken out, then your family's just vulnerable and left to their own devices. And so that's something that, to me, plate carrier with magazines, and then you can set them up. There's a bazillion ways to set these up, and you can do it however you want to. These are actually the G-Code Scorpion mag pouches on here, and they work really well. Okay, we're going to go to a couple of different things, and I can't touch anything now. We're going to talk about a couple of firearms. One thing that a lot of times, guys, you're prepping, you have your firearms, you have your stuff, but do you have something for your wife? Now, a lot of you do, but what about having a few extras? Now, there's some of us guys that have way more guns than we could pass out and outfit an army. But a lot of times in the prepping community, we have so many things we have to tend to. We have to make sure we have our food and our water and all the necessary things just for basic survival. We have a shotgun, we have a rifle maybe, we have a handgun, we might have a 22. But do we have extras? I had a buddy of mine we were talking about. He's a prepper and he has quite a few things. And he said, well, I got my pistol, I got my rifle, I got my shotgun, I got, And I said, well, do you have any extras? I said, what do you have for your friends that come over? And he's like, oh, well, I mean, I don't know. And he hadn't even really thought about it. I think a lot of people do think about it, but that is one thing a lot of times that we kind of forget. One thing, too, I would recommend, if you have a bedside handgun, a bedside firearm, make sure that your wife has one as well. And if you have mag compatibility, so let's say you have a Glock 19 and she has a Glock 19, you'll have the same mags. You have the same caliber. It gives you just some advantages. Are those advantages going to be needed in most situations? Not necessarily, but in a major grid down situation, it could be vital to have the same capacity. I have a story, and this is family members that their in-laws was an older couple that lived out, way out, and he had a gun and, to protect his house, and he there was nobody around him. And one night, some guy came to the back porch and just started beating on the door. Well, the guy got up. He went out there with his shotgun. It was a shotgun. He gets out there, and the guy comes through the door, and he's holding the shotgun on the guy. And he says, don't come in. And the guy just comes in. The guy was drugged out. Then he gets into a physical altercation. He's not able to defend himself with a shotgun and ends up getting into a fight with this guy on his back porch. It's an enclosed back porch. The older man finally subdued the guy. He was out of his mind. Well, the wife had called 911. So the police showed up. They got the guy. And as soon as they got the guy out of the porch, the man had a heart attack. He was on the verge of a heart attack during the altercation and was laying there. His wife had nothing in the bedroom, nothing. So if that guy had gotten the shotgun, he could have done whatever. So make sure that you have those that are able to carry a firearm. If you have children in your house that are 18 or even younger, teach them how to shoot. They can defend their house. We've seen a number of cases where young kids were at home and somebody broke in and the kid had some experience with a firearm and was able to use it to defend. Didn't even have to shoot necessarily, but they have actually had to pull the trigger to defend themselves during that situation. So make sure that you think through, do the people you love, number one, have training. I've taken them out. They're shooting. They know how to shoot. They know how to handle a gun, and they know how to handle it safely. And then have it accessible. Now, there are laws, and I just want to make this is a caveat. There are laws that say if you allow access to a minor, you can be charged for that. So you need to check your local laws. But I will counter with that, saying that all my children now are grown, but when my children were younger, 12, 13, 14, they could shoot. They knew how to handle a gun. They knew how to handle it safely. I would rather me personally go to jail and yet my child lived because they were able to defend themselves. That's just my philosophy. Your mileage may vary, as nothing fancy says, but to me, my life or their life is more important than any kind of consequences that I could deal with on the other side. That is my philosophy. So make sure that you have the ones you love, the ability to defend themselves. And that is just critical for me. I think there is nothing more. There's nothing worse than all my stuff's locked down. My 14-year-old daughter is at home. Some guy breaks in, rapes her, but I don't have to go to jail because I was following some, whatever. I'm not encouraging you to break the law, but I'm just saying you need to put things in perspective. Okay, one more thing that is very vital, and this goes along with firearms. When we first started our prepper group, we did an inventory, just talked about what have you got? What do you have for self-defense? Everybody pretty much had a shotgun. And everybody had maybe a handgun, maybe. Some didn't. Some just had a shotgun, and that's fine. Shotgun is a very short range weapon. You're not really going to get past, unless you have slugs, you're not going to get out to 100 yards. You're more like 50 yards, and then, of course, according to the load. But in a home defense situation, 50 yards is a long way. You don't necessarily need something past that. And a shotgun makes a great option for self-defense, home defense. Having a handgun, a lot of people have handguns. A lot of people have handguns, period, just to have them. Okay, so what about in a survival situation? You have a long-term or a long-range option. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're at home, you're bunkered in, you're out doing things, survival's going like it's going. I mean, it's tough anytime. Somebody gets about 600 yards off and they're taking pot shots at you. You have a shotgun, you have a handgun. You may have a .22 rifle. To get to that person is almost impossible. Can a .22 do it? Yeah, if you get the right windage, but even when it gets there, it's 600 yards. It may not be that effective. So having some sort of longer range option, it could be just a hunting rifle, a 308, a 270, something that you can get those distances to at least keep someone that has an advantage with distance from having that advantage. Now, a lot of people now have bought AR-15s. That's a great option. That's a 600-yard option. I mean, you can get with AR-15s, with knowing how to shoot it, you can really get some yardage. 300 yards is really easy with an AR. So giving you some distance. 300 yards with a handgun, 300 yards with 22, 300 yards with a shotgun. Not a good option. Having something that'll reach out. Now, you may have an AK-47. AK-47s are great out to 300 yards, but then they lose supersonic speed and they start to destabilize. It's a heavier bullet than your 5.56, but the 5.56 is actually a little better option at longer ranges. But another option is to get something like we have back here on the wall. We have a SETME. It's a HKG3 predecessor, but it's 308. I can get long distances with it. I put an optic on it. I can definitely get some distance. They're not cheap, but neither is a standard hunting rifle, but that may be what your option is. So make sure that you have an option for long range. Just gives you, it's a force multiplier, gives you more capability. And a lot of times when I'm planning out my preps and I'm looking at things, I look and see what the military is doing. I see what the police are doing, what they are doing. And then I go, okay, let me look at some of these lessons and let me be able to use them for more of my advantage, because they're in a current survival situation when they're out there. So check that out. Okay. Let's go to some questions.
Nick Howard asks, in your experience, is a quality aftermarket Cerakote job on a firearm able to meet or exceed the factory Cerakote jobs?
Sometimes in a factory situation, that everything is to certain tolerances and they have certain prepping. The metal prepping is very important in a Cerakote finish. But I would say that typically a good Cerakote finish, as long as the metal is prepped properly, is going to hold up just as well as it will in a factory setting. It's just according to if they know what they're doing. I know when Robbie Wheaton, which a lot of you guys have been, and I'll get to that. I'll get to Robbie in a second, but definitely Robbie was doing a lot of Cerakoting as well and doing it a really good job. And he knew how to prep the material. And so most of your guys, especially, that's their business. I work with a company called Kraken Customs. And that's what they do. They do some really great Cerakote finishes, very cool finishes. They're actually local to me. And so they're going to do some work for us coming up. But the one thing about Cerakote is that it really protects the metal. And if you have especially bluing, or you have some, a lot of times with more budget firearms, you get some problems sometimes with humidity. And even though they have these nitride-esque finishes on them or anodized finishes, you can have some problems if you have a lot of humidity in your area. We do, and so we have to be real careful. Something like a Glock, we don't have problems. Sometimes when I'm carrying a gun, sometimes the safety can get a little bit, red, a little rose color on it from perspiration and those things. So having a good Cerakote finish can be a big advantage. But I would say that on the whole, your major production gun companies that are, that's what they do, and they have the equipment to do it. They're probably going to be a little better, but I'm sure as long as people are prepping the metal correctly, they should be able to do a good job. And the good thing is they're right there. If you can send it, say, hey, look, you're at this problem, you need to fix it.
What now asks, what is the best way to start getting precious metals?
Okay, for me, pawn shops. Pawn shops are a great one. We have a local place that called Upstate Gold here in Greenville, South Carolina, and they buy and sell precious metals. They do a lot of coins, have a lot of different things that, for collectors and things like that, but they do keep precious metals in stock. So I go up there, I put cash down, buy the precious metals, and put them back. Gun shows are a great way. The one thing you need to understand, though, is know the current prices. Many people don't know it right now, but gold, just the last time I looked, it was at $2,963. That was the high. I think that was a day or so ago. That is the most it's ever been, ever in history. Silver is up to about $32 an ounce. But silver in the same amount is going to be extremely heavy compared to a lot lesser amount of gold. But you can dole out a quarter or $1 or whatever in silver, and you're not taking that gold, which is worth a lot more, for smaller items. I like both. I like to have both. but pawn shops a lot of times can have it. Sometimes, well, coin dealers are going to be a good option. But at gun shows, I see a lot of gold, a lot of silver, and a lot of people dealing. I have bought quarters in the little rounds at gun shows before. I just thought I just want to go ahead and pick up a few. But what you want to know is, what is the current price going for? And you can look it up. You can look it up and say, what is a silver quarter? How much should I pay for a silver quarter? A silver quarter is 90% silver. So if you're finding a walking liberty, which is an ounce of silver, that's 99.99% silver. So you need to kind of balance that out as well. Get online before you buy, see what the prices are going, then maybe go to an outlet like a flea market of all things. Sometimes even at yard sales, people are selling stuff. I was at auctions one time that this guy had a whole lot. And when it was an estate auction, and they were selling silver, and it was on auction. So you need, though, to know the price. So get your price down, whatever you're looking for. If you're looking for junk silver, which is one thing I'm big about, because everybody knows what it is. They can look at a quarter and go, that's a silver quarter. I want to know how much that is market value. And then I don't want to pay, or if I have to pay a little more, or you may pay a little less, but it'll give you a good idea. If you just walk into some place, and typically they're going to sell it really at market value because they're in the business to do it. But you want to make sure, especially like at a gun show or somewhere where somebody has some silver or some gold, and to have a good idea of what those coins are going for and the real market price.
Dar asks, what kind of drones should I consider for prepping?
What drones? DJI is a great company. They do, in fact, a lot of my audio is DJI. The thing is, and this is going to happen with all the drones. There are transmitters that the Chinese have put into a lot of these electronics. But I think that's a good option, but we are not huge into drones. And you can watch that on our videos. We don't do a lot of drone work. We have friends that have drones. So I am not the expert at drones. I do have a guy that actually lives on our street that has a YouTube channel that does drones. And he's got a cool setup, but I don't know what drones he uses. So really, that's unfortunately out of my wheelhouse. And obviously, that goes to more of your younger guys. But it's one of the things we're getting ready to do. We just hired my eldest son. My daughter is on the Sarah Mac, and my son Seth, he started working with us full time. And my younger son's going to be coming on in the next couple of months. And that is one thing that I want him to do, is to get into drones. If you are in the comments and you have drone experience, answer his question. So that's the best I can do.
First Last says, I forgot to pay the gas bill and it was cut during a cold snap. What can I use for backup, cooking, heating, water, etc.? Thanks.
It's according to if you're using propane, usually like you have a large tank out back and it's hooked up. But, having backups, and this is one thing we do. Propane, to me, is one of the most stable fuel sources that you can have, except for in wood. Wood is a great one for keeping things heated. But as far as multi-use, propane is one of the best. You can store it in those cans, the 20-pound can, or, you can get 50, 100. Of course, you can get the big ones brought out. But if you can adapt your smaller tank, then you can use it, for whatever. I mean, you can actually hook up like a 100-pound tank, and you can use it and hook it up, and to be able to use whatever you have. But the one thing we do is we store up the 20-pound tanks, and we have a lot of the 1-pound tanks. We keep them because they will last for a long, long time. One thing I will suggest with buying propane, like for your grill, is if you go to like Walmart or go to some store or gas station that has the propanes, the 20-pound tanks, typically they're only filled 80%. And it was just part of the what they did a few years ago, where they, instead of raising the price because propane went up, they just lowered the volume. So it was the same price, it was less. If you have a tank refilled, don't take it up to Walmart and exchange it. Take that tank and go to one of your local gas suppliers. We have a Ace Hardware that does all this propane filling. And of course, you can go to your standard gas company and they'll fill it up completely. But if you have a good propane tanks, they will last for years and years and years because of the way they're sealed. They're very regulated. They're very stable. I love propane. And so we keep a bunch of them. When it comes to gas, we don't. We do keep gas because we have a gas generator, and we'll keep about 20 gallons of gas around. But we keep it in a very safe location. We keep it out of the house. We keep it and we check on it. And then, of course, you have to rotate gas. So having, and I think Pri-G is a great additive to put into your gas to keep it going longer. But when it comes to propane, get some 10 or 20 pounders, get some 50 or 100 pounders, put it to the side, learn how to switch out your big tank, the couplings. And I'm not really sure, it's according to what company you're using. And do you want to really start risking that? That could be, a little bit sketchy. But having the adapters, being able to use it, it's going to give you some other options. Because let's face it, if the grid's down and you're not able to get a refuel, but you have extra cans around, you need to learn how to do that anyway, how you can adjust. A lot of times we have our hot water heaters, we have our stoves, we have different items that we use. I like to have a generator that is dual fuel. So I can use gas in it, but I can switch it over and I can use propane because I can store a lot of propane. And you can have natural gas. You can have tri-fuel.
Antonio G asked, is it better to have a bug out bag or inch bag or have both?
Your inch bag is, I'm gone. I'm not coming back. This is it. I'm leaving. Inch bag and a bug out bag should be kind of close. I mean, there's going to be some differences and a lot of it's semantics, but having a good bug out bag. But I want you to think about it this way. What we do is we have a bug out bag. We have our bug out bags, but we depend on our get home bags. So we put a bag in every car. All my family members, I got them a bag. We decked it out. They keep it in their car. I said, don't take this out unless you have to. And then you should be on foot. So having your bag. And of course, I've done videos about this before where I've used my get home bag while I'm on the road doing things that just situations that happened. And thank goodness I had this bag where I had the items that I really needed or I could improvise to do things with. So get home bag is my primary. Bug out bag is I've got to leave. Now, for me, bug out bag, if I'm leaving on foot, that's not a good thing. That's a glorified refugee. I do not want to leave on foot if at all possible, but there may be a situation where there's just not an option. You have no other choice. And it should be a really bad emergency situation. One thing could be is you have a local train that derails and it has chemicals on it and it's dangerous. And they had that a few years ago, not too far from here. And they had to evacuate 1,500 people immediately. They had to walk right out of their houses. So having a bug out bag doesn't mean it's a nationwide or a giant area. It could be a smaller area. It could be your personal SHTF. But having a good bug out bag to me is very important. And having that 72 hours of goods. Now, when you go to your inch bag, you're gone. You've got to have a lot of stuff. You're going to be doing a lot of improvising. It's going to have to be bigger. And we talked about inch bags a while back, but I really want to get in depth in the difference between a bug out bag and an inch bag. But they're very similar. There's just a few things that you're going to need for long term. But if you do, this is the most important part of a bug out bag, is to have a destination, period. Have a destination. An inch bag to me is when you're traveling somewhere where you're going a long way from home and then you've got to get back home. And one thing I've said this lately a number of times is go on your phone. If you're going to a traveling somewhere, get out your GPS or your maps and plug in how long it takes to walk from point A back to your home. It'll shock you. 4 hours from our house would take a month to get back walking. Not a walk direct, but it'll take a month for us to get from point A to point B. We cannot stock up enough food to go that far on foot. So having reality is really one of the biggest things. The other thing is, think about this right now. You have to leave your house. You grab your bug out bag, you head out. How are you really going to survive? You need to think about these things. And what am I going to do? What am I going to do after 3 days when I'm out of food? What are my options? Do I have water? Am I going to be able to access water? Just medical, all those different things. And really think it through as if today you had to walk and you were in a survival situation. Is this really going to be adequate? And I would say no. It's not. Now, it may allow you to survive, but how horrible could that be getting from point A to point B? The big thing for me, we're bugging out, is I'm loading up all of our vehicles with everything we could possibly load out. And we're not going to be leaving we're going to leave as little as we can to a point, but yet we can't carry but so much. A big covered trailer would be great, or a big camper with all your stuff in it, because you're leaving your stuff, and looting and everything else that's going to just devastate where you are could happen. So to me, but then the downside to bugging out in a big vehicle, having supplies and everything on there, and maybe having stuff packed on top, on the luggage racks and everything else, is that you become a massive target. And when you have a lot of people that are wanting stuff and they're desperate, it could really get crazy. So here's the thing, guys, and this is why we prep. We prep to give ourselves buying time. We're just buying time. And once that happens, we've got to do whatever it is, and hopefully situations will change or opportunities will open up, because you can't do everything unless you are self-sufficient homesteader and you've got everything you need. And then still, there can be some situations. I know that was a long response.
Mike and Stein asked, what is your favorite non-Glock EDC or SHTF 9mm?
Well, obviously, the Glock's one of my tops, mainly because I've just shot it so much. There are some great options out there. And I'll tell you, the PDP, the Walther PDP, incredible firearm. But one that I've really kind of gotten excited about is the new Echelon Compact. It, to me, fits the profile of the Glock in a lot of ways that make me like it, but the grip is a heck of a lot more ergonomic. And while I like the standard PDP, the standard Echelon, the Compact really kind of just fits that sweet spot. And I would highly recommend checking it out. Now, if you have really larger hands, the PDP is going to give you a little more grip. It's a little bit larger, but still very suitable for average hand sizes. But I love those guns. Now, and those are polymer striker fire pistols, and there's a lot of them out there. But to me, the Smith & Wesson, not the Bodyguard, but just the standard 2.0, M&P 2.0, great gun. Fantastic gun. So Smith & Wesson, you have your Glock, you have your Springfield Armory Echelon, and then the Walther PDP, the Beretta. That is a great gun as well. Their new Beretta, the A1, it's a top-notch handgun. And they did have one with the kind of clunky slide serrations, but then that was the Mod Zero, but they've upped it, and great gun as well. What I would look for is a company for my SHTF gun. I would look for something that is a premium company that produces really excellence. There's a lot of great guns out there. And there's a lot of polymer striker fire pistols out there. But for me, I'm going to gravitate toward the upper tier. Now, if I'm on a budget, the Taurus G2C, or G3, actually, G3 series is excellent. The new Ruger Glock clone, the RMX, that's a great gun, and it has a lot of abilities. The Dagger, the Palmetto State Armory Dagger, solid gun, and it takes all your Glock parts, but yet it gives you a different grip, and it kind of changes things. So, there are some budget options as well. But as far as for me, if it is SHTF, I'm either grabbing my Glock or I'm grabbing my Echelon or PDP, something that I've had a lot of experience with. Okay, it is 1 o'clock. Can you believe that? All right. So, guys, 10 items, a little different. Some of you guys have already thought about this, I know, but take this. If there's some holes in your preps, these are going to be some items that can be extremely viable. And a lot of these are really geared toward more communications or vision or self-defense, but that is really some areas that you need to fine tune, especially as just a basic prepper, a homesteader, and you're going to need some security. You're going to need to be able to protect what you have because you've worked very hard for it. But again, guys, this is the deal with prepping, and I mentioned this a minute ago, is it's buying you time. That is the big thing. You can't prep for everything, but you sure as heck can give yourself some advantages to get to that next level. And that's really what, honestly, prepping is all about. And you should be heading toward a little bit more self-sufficiency as you go, because that's really where you're going to be able to reap the benefits of more sustainable living. Again, we want to give a big thank you to Exotac. Build your fire kit. It's vital. It's important having multiple different ways to start fire, redundant ways. Having some good fire tinder as well. And Exotac gives 20% off using Suits20. Also, check out suitsgear.com. Great website. We've been doing a lot over there. And again, there is some suit swag over there if you want to just support the channel. Big thank you to Sarah Mack for getting the questions together and helping me set up. So be strong, be of good courage. God bless America. Long live the Republic.